Maybe
Welcome,
David again.
everyone. Hello, thank you for joining. Welcome. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes.
In the meantime, we do have a segmentation quiz we would like you to take as participants. It'll actually correlate to what we're going to be speaking with you about today, about the different segmentations of, I guess, shoppers within the United States. And if you want to determine what kind of segment you fall under, if you're wasting food or not wasting food, we'd love for you to go ahead and take the quiz. I can drop it in the chat. That
There's a
helps.
QR code also here on the screen. You can
Okay, great. That works.
scan that with your phones.
We may have to get going.
Yeah, let's get started. So welcome everyone to our March webinar of the Consumer Food Waste webinar series. Thank you all for joining. As a reminder, the series is part of a USDA grant between Ohio State University and Rutgers Cooperative Extension. This is created to help create a national consumer food waste community of practice. Our monthly webinar series showcases efforts of extension groups, university researchers, and other leaders in the food and sustainability industry. So today we are joined by Elaine, David, and Natasha from WRAP Americas, as well as Leslie from the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. They're going to be speaking to us about some of the latest research around consumer food waste, a behavior change pilot program that's going on in Denver, as well as Food Waste Prevention Week. If you have the time to take this quick quiz, please go ahead and do so, and I will pass it over to our speakers to get started.
Great. So we are having a little bit of technical difficulty on this end, but Elaine is on. Is there a way to unmute her? Do you have that capability? And then she can.
Hey.
Yay.
Hi, Elaine.
Wonderful.
Just so you know, for the past 20 minutes, I have been struggling with technical difficulties. I'm on via my phone, so I'm going to need to ask if someone, Natasha or Leslie, if you guys would share the screen.
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen. You guys just tell me when to move on next. And if Sabrina, I believe your name is, sorry if I'm not.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. If you could allow me to share my screen, that would be great.
Of course.
Ready?
Yep, go ahead. You should be able to share now.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll start with our agenda. I'm not sure how much I missed.
We did go ahead and give them the quiz to take. A little bit of background, not much, but a little bit of background.
Yeah. All right, if you go ahead to the 2 slides into the agenda. All right, so thank you all so much for joining us today. Wanted to talk to you a little bit. We're going to take you on a share our journey that we've been on to reduce wasted food in the U.S. from a national perspective through Food Waste Prevention Week. Then we're going to do a little dive into some practical insights and impactful behavioral work that has been happening in Denver, and then the expansion of that work through a collaboration with WRAP and some other community partners on some evidence-based intervention design, as well as share some of the gleanings on household food waste from WRAP segmentation analysis. And then we will wrap it up by sharing some new projects underway and what's next. So let's go ahead and begin with some insights that have emerged from Food Waste Prevention Week. We'll go to the next slide. And the next one. All right, so this kind of shares with you a little bit of the theme for this year. What is Food Waste Prevention Week? It's a national campaign that takes place the first full week of April each year to kick off Earth Month. The purpose of the week is to create a space for all of us to come together in community to educate and inspire action to reduce wasted food. It is a multi-pronged campaign. There's social media, in-person events, webinars, student engagement, and contest. So we'll go to the next slide. And it all came about as it was a grassroots response to the challenge of, number one, the amount of food waste that we all see, and then number two, all of us, a lot of groups that were working in silos. And so Food Waste Prevention Week actually started in California as a social media campaign in 2018. And there were three women, Tracy Delaney, Savannah North, and Wendy Gosling, who spearheaded it. They partnered with NRDC, and it was a successful event in 2018. However, the challenge that they ran into was they had other jobs, so continuing with the event wasn't sustainable. So in I guess it was the next year, we had a group in Florida, and we were all working in silos. I represented the schools. There was a woman who was working in events and hospitality, our Florida Department of Agriculture, Environmental Protection, and Recycle Florida Today. And we kind of meet just to talk about what was going on, what the strides that we were taking to reduce food waste, the challenges, and just to talk it through. And we learned about California's Food Waste Prevention Week. We met with the group from California. They shared it with us, and then we hosted our own event. And the next year, much to our delight, we had cities and states and organizations across the country who reached out and that said, hey, you know what? We don't want to work in silos anymore. We want to be part of this nationwide community. So the first learning that I could share was we had a variety of stakeholders that were planning the event. The key people that were involved, part of their job was to reduce food waste. So that really helped tremendously. Then we'll go to the next one. So as we mentioned, build it and they will come. One of the reasons why it worked was events can serve as a catalyst. It gave a reason and a purpose for people to come together and not be in silos. It was there's power in numbers. There were a hub of resources for partners to use and kind of built that community of sharing. As we mentioned, it was a multi-pronged event. You know, social media is great, but there's no one size fits all solution or way to engage people. And for long-term change, as we know, we have to engage as many stakeholders as possible to be part of the solution, and hopes that we will reach that tipping point. And we'll go ahead to the next one. Oh, I just love this picture, and I had to share it with you because this kind of gives an insight into some of the impacts that the event has had. We put together tools and resources, and we share them with organizations throughout the country, and they make the event their own. They design it as to what's going to work best in their community. So that's another one of the other learnings that we had. We'll go ahead to the next one. So some of the impacts and challenges, I'll talk about challenges. You know, it started as a grassroots event. You know, last year we had just shy of 800 partners throughout the country representing various sectors. Are there more sectors to engage? Yes. Do we have everyone in the food system? No. There's some gaps. We have very few retailers that are engaged in private sectors. So that's one of the challenges that we have. The other one is measuring success. We're hosting this event. Are we changing behavior? How many people are impacted? That information we currently don't have. We don't have a survey that goes out to people that participate. We do know that people are influenced by their peers and their neighbors. So by some of those grassroots events, by the social media, we're hopeful that it's touching people. You could see our social media was 17 million was the reach. And we don't have the budget to boost social media. That is just from the community of partners that come together to get this messaging out. So I think that's a testament to it. And we've got some anecdotals. Tennessee, the state of Tennessee's Department of Environmental Conservation, they started hosting these bread to tap events where people who just wanted to go grab a beer would grab a beer and learn ways to reduce food waste. And that has spread throughout the country, as well as our partner. We have a partner map on the website on the homepage. If you scroll all the way down, you can see partners in your area. And we've kind of served as a conduit for connecting people who want to get in touch with organizations that are near them. So we'll go on to the next one. Sponsors, obviously, all of this is possible because we do have amazing sponsors. We are able to contract out an ad agency and offer high quality assets that are free to all of the partners, run contests, our website and operations. And then last but not least, clearly, if we go to the next one, we have the reason why the event is so successful is we do have a rock star planning team, and they are committed and determined to create something to serve all of the partners and are committed to the event. So that's one of the reasons why we have a variety. It's not just we don't have an internal planning team. We've got leaders throughout the country, grassroots organizations, universities that all come together for this. And speaking of our Rockstar planning team, we'll go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to, there's Leslie Baesens, who is pictured hosting a Bread to Tap event last year for Food Waste Prevention Week. And not only is she a Rockstar member of our Food Waste Prevention Week planning team, she is also a leader in the city of Denver. And I'll turn it over to her to chat you up a little bit about the programs that have been going on in Denver.
Thank you so much, Elaine. We'll go next, please. So I will be talking to you a little bit about Denver's effort to run behavior change campaigns as part of our Food Matters Solutions for Food Waste Prevention work. So we have run to date 3 campaigns, one in 2021, 23, and 24. For today's presentation, I'm going to focus on the 2023 and 2024 campaigns. Reason being that in 2021, because it was during COVID, we weren't able to do focus groups. And so the campaign was less thorough than the following 2 campaigns. So we're going to focus on the last 2. Next, please. So the first thing we did, we ran some focus groups. We partnered with a local organization and we talked to some of our lower income residents, some of whom make use of food banks and pantries, to kind of hear what their challenges are with regards to food waste, what are some barriers, why is food being wasted, and particularly what are opportunities for the city to help these residents overcome these barriers. So we spoke to 68 residents, the majority of which were Hispanic, and then some African-American residents. And essentially, talking to the residents confirmed what we suspected, that food is being wasted across income levels, not necessarily for the same reasons. In particular, what we heard is that the scarcity mindset was responsible for a lot of the food waste with our lower income residents, in the sense that when folks grew up in food insecure households and when they have a little bit easier access to food, although not really all that easy, but when they do have access to food, they tend to over prepare, over shop, because sometimes they also do have difficulty going to the grocery store. And so some food gets wasted because there's just difficulty with storage and with over preparing. So this is how we decided to prepare some of our tools for distribution to our residents. Next, please. And here I'm showing some of the collaterals we created. So here is a bin that has a sticker on it that says "Eat this first," as well as information about expiration dates. And it's in English on one side and Spanish on the other. All of the materials were in English and Spanish. Next, please. We also distributed some reusable stickers that also said "Eat this first," as well as some postcards that feature some really actionable tips to reduce food waste and that feature some of our local residents. So we were hoping to really create that connection with the residents from these neighborhoods on the posters and in the neighborhoods in which we were running the campaign. So we distributed these collaterals to about 3,000 households. We did the majority of these door to door. So we had canvassers go and leave the materials behind at people's door. And all of that was done completely at random. So the residents did not know they were being chosen for this campaign. We essentially selected random addresses in the city. And we also partnered with local organizations to distribute these events, these materials at community events and food distribution events. Next, please. I'm going to walk you through really quickly the evaluation and how all that went. So we evaluated results two ways, as you can see here. So the first was survey, administered in person, again, by canvassers. We surveyed a control group, so people who did not get our materials, and an intervention group, so people who did get our materials. Similarly, we ran waste audits. Same deal. We did a control group, people who did not get the materials, and an intervention group. We did two waste audits. One was a baseline audit to kind of see what was the baseline amount of food being wasted, and then we did a post-implementation. I'm going to walk you through the results first of the waste audits and then of the survey, so in the reverse order that I put them on the slide. Next, please. So this is a little bit overwhelming to present virtually, even though I tried to simplify it as much as I could. But essentially here you could see the results of the edible food waste. So edible being anything that's not really bones or like hard, like an avocado pit or something like that. So that's what falls in the edible category, which is about 70% of what people discarded. So the treatment group who did get our materials is in bold. And I guess the main takeaway from this, you can see the change in terms of like how much food, what is the difference in the baseline waste audit and the post-intervention in the last column. And as you will see, it was essentially inconclusive. So you can see in the 2023 campaign, waste went down both in the control and the treatment group. And then in the 2024 campaign, there was even a little bit of an increase in the treatment group. We don't actually really know why this is. It's difficult because, again, the people were chosen at random. They did not know their trash was being audited. So we're just really selecting like just random residents. And we don't know of a lot of people that have done it this way. So we don't really have a base for comparison of why these results may have been inconclusive in terms of it may have been methodology error. We might have needed to sample more waste, like more trash, or over a greater period of time. So that part of it is a little bit up in the air. What is more encouraging, next please, is the results of our surveys. So in the survey, I think first and foremost was really cool and encouraging is that 80% of people who received their materials used at least some of the materials. By far the most liked item that we distributed in both campaigns, so in 23 and 24, was that storage bin for the fridge with the "Eat This First" sticker. People just really liked the bin. And so even in the informal comments that people made about the campaign, they just reported using the bin and that it was really helpful, especially for families with children, and like putting items in that bin so that the family knows to go look in the bin and consume these items in priority. Then we also gave out, like I said, these reusable stickers that said "Eat This First," which people could put on different containers. So that was also really popular. Next, please. Then what was also really encouraging is in the treatment group, people reported throwing away food items significantly less than in the control group. So you can see the treatment group is in the darker color. And so they reported to a statistically significant extent wasting food across all these food categories less often than the control group. Next, please. And then this is our final result that's also pretty significant and encouraging. So we were, working on date labeling and trying to work on getting people to better understand that they need to rely on their senses. And we had an emphasis on eating leftovers. And so people in the intervention group who got our materials reported being much more likely to eat their leftovers and to eat food past the printed date. So both of these findings were really encouraging, despite like I said, the fact that the waste audits did not show necessary result, and we don't really know why. But in terms of the feedback we got from residents on our campaign, they loved the materials. They were super happy that the city of Denver is working on this issue, and they reported finding the materials helpful. So that's it for me. That was just a quick overview. And I think it was really great for us to be put in touch with RAB, because doing these behavior change campaigns has been really important to us. And we were kind of at a stopping point at this time with like We didn't really have funding to keep this going. So this was a really perfect synergy when, we came across what the RAP team was doing in terms of taking like next steps and taking this to the next level. So we're really excited for what's to come. And I'm going to pass it back to the RAP team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If we could go over to the next slide. So as you can see, Leslie and her team have been implementing these interventions in the city of Denver for several years. And as Leslie mentioned, through a funding opportunity with RAP, we are able to partner with Leslie in the city of Denver, a nonprofit called We Don't Waste, Denver Public Schools, and a retailer to co-design and test out some behavior change interventions that are based on RAP's segmentation analysis and behavior change principles. So I'll briefly share with you some of the insights, and then David will talk more about the actual pilot. So this is the model of RAP's behavior change program. We started out, and this is what I'll be talking about, is the segmentation analysis that occurred last May and June. We have the results from that and the learnings, and then we have a grant to work with the national retailer and then the city. We're right now on the third phase where we just had a meeting before this webinar with all of our partners to talk about the behavior change implementations and the timeline for executing those. And then when we're done, before the end of the year, we'll be sharing those insights. If you could go to the next slide for us. So to tell you a little bit more, I know if you were on the call when it first began, there was a link, and it's still a link in the chat for the segmentation analysis. If you'd like to take it, it was looked at people's food habits and attitudes towards food. It occurred last May through June, about 8,000 adults. If you could go to the next slide, please. So this was interesting. This shows we know about a third of food is wasted and a third of fresh foods are typically wasted. If you take a look at, it ranges from 37% to 31%. It's not a huge differentiation, but if you look at your top five, we've got salad, potatoes, fish, bananas, broccoli. Oh, and then broccoli, apples, and carrots are all pretty closely aligned. So we'll go to the next one. Obviously, the research showed there are personal skills and competencies to manage food. Food and reducing food waste behaviors is, we think recycling is complicated, and that tends to be a little bit more straightforward than getting into people's behaviors, how they manage food. So there are a whole host of skills and competencies in managing food, and one of them was people assessing edibility. Is this something I should eat? Should I toss it? They're confused about date labels. And people do think that they waste less food than they actually do. So we'll go to the next one. Here you go. These are some of the skills, and I highlighted at the bottom. Labeling is a competency that a lot of people lack, and it's either labeling things once they've been opened, and I think that's probably why Leslie's Eat This First bin was needed and helpful for people, because then they knew they didn't have to actually label it. They put it in the bin and they knew they needed to eat it relatively soon. It didn't get lost in the back of the refrigerator. The other one is labeling products before storing in the freezer. And I have to say, sometimes I am guilty of this. If I haven't labeled what I put in my freezer, it gets lost, and it's almost like it's a delay mechanism before throwing it away. So those were two that stood out. We go to the next slide. The segmentation analysis also looked at key audiences that were more likely to waste food. So we talked a little bit about households with young children, under time pressure. Sometimes kids are finicky, so they tend to be higher food wasters. You look to the right, that graph, 18 to 24-year-olds are the highest subgroup. 48% are high food wasters. And we were having a discussion about this, and some people are like, oh, I'm really shocked. 18 to 24-year-olds, why would they be such high food wasters? Coming from an education background, I was not shocked, because unless a school cafeteria has a share table where the children could put food, perfectly good food they're not going to eat, we are systematically training this generation to treat perfectly good food as trash. They don't have a lot of time to eat. They have food that's unopened, unpeeled. They're not going to eat it. What could they do with it? They have to throw it in the trash. So great opportunity reaching this, the schools and this demographic. If you look at the bottom, another opportunity, there's more school cafeterias than there are McDonald's. And there's a lot of food waste currently going on there. So there's a great opportunity to recover food. I had to go off on my tangent because I come from an education background. Okay, next one. So certain lifestyle segments are higher food wasters. If you had time to do the segmentation analysis, you may see where you landed. Segments 6 and 7 tend to be among the highest. And what does that mean? Let's go to the next slide. So if you take a look, this was the measurement. They broke up the population into eight different segments, and they looked at barriers to behavior change and opportunities. Segments, we'll go ahead to the next one. This is a little bit about each segment. And this one gets into, so segment 1 is they get the why, not always the how. They think green, but they're big consumers, so they may be interested and care about the environment, but they tend to be big shoppers. So there's a good opportunity, and they have an openness for change. So there's an opportunity for that segment. The other one, segment 3, we saw with the younger households, they're pressured providers. And they called under pressure greens. So sometimes it is time pressure, financial pressure, that gets in the way. That's a barrier for wasting food. Then segment 7 was green for the gram. This is the younger generation who sometimes tend to be, this group were bigger consumers, and they may talk about the environment and being green, but it didn't necessarily align with their actions. If you notice, segment 2 is still significant. That group was called Why Should I Care? Disengaged or indifferent. That population is not necessarily being targeted now because they are harder to reach and harder to change their mind. So segments 1, 3, and 7 are the ones that we are focusing on. If you go to the next slide. Okay, so there's also, this is significant. There's a high level of denial. All right, 39% of the population that was surveyed, which was the US and UK? The dark blue is the US. 39% of those surveyed classified themselves as high food wasters, and 64% think that they do not waste as much as the average. They think they waste less than the average households. And so the reason why this is really important when you're designing behavior change interventions is the topic, what they call it's salience. It's if you're going to make a change, you need to recognize that you have a problem. You have to admit that you have a problem. So for people, when we're designing behavior change, it has to be first salience. You have to get people to understand or recognize, oh gosh, I actually do waste food, and then introduce some interventions. Not necessarily, I could come to you with all these skills and kitchen hacks, but if you don't think you have a problem, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So it's really significant to recognize that a lot of people don't think they waste as much food as everyone else. All right, the next one. All right, so this is hot off the press. We had a great opportunity to do some research with Denver residents, and these residents were given a task they had all these tasks to do into videotape. They did not know it was around food waste. They did know it dealt with food in their kitchen. And so if you could go to the next one, We did see there was a lot of, and I don't know if we have sound set up. We do have, oh, what is that little two? All right, let's see if that plays. Up. It's not sound, but you know what? I would love to narrate for you. She's looking at her meat and recognizing it says sell by. So she identified that, yes, that's when the store sells it. There's also another random use by date where there's nothing on there. She looks at her milk and says that usually she looks at the best by date on the milk. And if she's opened the milk, it goes maybe a week or two. And then at the top, she's going to look at some olives, and the olives have a best by date by June of this year. And so she thinks that she's got to throw away all the olives according to that date. So just gave us a little bit more insight into really the confusion around date labels. So we'll go ahead over to the next. We'll turn it over to David Hall, and he's going to share a little bit about what we know about behavior change and how this fits into our project in Denver. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how we're taking all this insight, all the work that's been done previously, the great work that's happened with Food Waste Prevention Week and projects like Leslie's, and talk about how we're taking that forward into a pilot in Denver. Next slide, please. So I think one of the things that's apparent when you start studying food waste is the behaviors that sit behind it are very complex. This is kind of one list that you could create, but I've seen longer ones as well. And the reality is there's a whole range of different behaviors, from planning through to shopping and storage and preparing, which result in food waste. So food waste is not a singular behavior that has one solution. It's a whole set of behaviors right down the chain of food management. If we go on to the next slide. So what we've done in Denver this time round for the pilot that we're about to run is focus on one particular area. So based both on the evidence around the issues that have most impact, but also talking to partners and getting a sense of where people want to focus, we've decided that what we call assessing edibility, or more simply kind of whether to eat or toss, is the area that we want to look at. So this is about whether people feel kind of comfortable and confident in eating food that's sitting in their refrigerator or is maybe leftovers that they've had for a while, and whether people understand date labels and all those things which Elaine has already referred to. If we go on to the next slide. If we think about kind of what behavioral science can do to help us with that, what it tells us is that if we want to change behavior, the single biggest and best thing you can do is make it easy. So if we can actually make it easier for people to do the thing we want them to do, that's a huge step in the right direction. Date labels in the US at the moment don't make it particularly easy for people because they're quite confusing, they're inconsistent, they're different in different states. And so one thing you can obviously do is have simpler labels and help people understand, help people understand what they mean. But clearly sort of making it easy for people to understand what they should do and helping them do it is one way to create change. The next one is adding pressure. If people feel motivated, if they want to do something different, that really helps. And then finally, obviously, food waste typically happens, the two places that really influence whether people waste food are kind of in the store and then in the kitchen at home. So if you can get to people in those moments, that can be very effective. If we just go on to the next slide. And then, thinking about those moments, there are lots of different things we can do. So behavioral science and behavior change interventions are not just about, traditional communications, for example. There's lots of different ways we can get to people through digital solutions, through nudges, through engagement campaigns, etc. And we're looking at a range of different things in Denver to influence people's behavior. Next slide, please. And if you look at date labels, for example, which is one of the areas we're looking at, you can see that in the UK, there's been a whole range of different interventions designed to help people navigate their way around date labels. So, for example, when there are items, non-perishable items that have a date which just shows whether something is at its best rather than whether it's still safe to eat, there's been some great activities done by supermarkets around best before, still great after, helping people understand what they can do with something when it's past that date. Next slide, please. So in Denver, we've realized that there isn't a single silver bullet. There isn't just one thing we can do to help people take action. And we actually saw from, the research that Elaine showed where we filmed people in their homes. People don't like wasting food. They don't go out of their way to do it, but often life is getting in the way, or kind of things like pack sizes and so on are making it difficult for them to do the right thing. So we're going to need to create a cocktail of interventions that can help people change, and they need to be simple and practical, and appealing. If we go on to the next slide. So what we're doing in Denver is we're focusing on 5 specific behaviors, and we are being super specific about what they are and the tips that are connected to them. And then we're getting those behaviors out to people via a range of partners, including the city, including a retailer, which in this case is Sprouts, through the public schools, and so on. And on the next slide, this is just kind of one example of one of the things that we're doing. And don't take any notice of the kind of visuals on the right, because those are still, we're still working through how this is going to be brought to life creatively. But a great way of helping people understand whether it's still eggs are still good to eat is the egg float test. You may have seen that. If not, look it up, because it's a great way of enabling people to understand whether their eggs are still good to eat. And then if we go on to the next slide, something else that we're talking to people about is encouraging them to eat their broccoli stalks. So not just the sort of fluffy, flowery bit on the top of the broccoli, but actually the whole broccoli can be good to eat. So we're having 5 different interventions like that, which we're encouraging people to take up. And if we just go on to the next slide, and we're going to have a whole range of channels that we reach people through, from in-store through to some fridge magnets, through to stickers and other things. Next slide, please. And the whole kind of point of our pilot in Denver is that we're going to have a range of different partners who are going to be taking this out there. So if we go on to the next slide, I will now hand over to Natasha to tell you a bit more about what's happening in the wider project.
Hey there, nice to see all of you. My name is Natasha Dyer, and I think I'm gonna lose where the slides are now. Like, oh my God. Let's see. Oh, here we are. Yeah, just really quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but what we're trying to get across to you is that what you've just seen here is a local government working with a retailer, and a bonus that there were schools involved. And this is the space RAP works in, but we're realizing that to get this message across, it's more of a marathon and not a race. So even though the funding we've had has really just been focusing on local governments and retailers, we're hoping eventually to kind of make more connections with cities, so that we can work with local governments that might have a connection to their hospitality sector. Do you have a way that you can get restaurants engaged in providing some consumer facing information to their diners? What about even a local influencer that's trusted in the community and can actually get that message out? What about universities? Those are small cities, because they've all got their own waste management plans, and actually can start to get this information out to these kids that are actually right in this change of their lives. And it's just like kind of like a petri dish. I would think that you can put this information in their dining hall. You have this opportunity to create more consumer-based social norming at their dining halls, even in their curriculum if possible. What if you're a local government that's working on composting and kind of doing? This is the space RAP works in, as more of the prevention space, and why we would like to partner with cities, because even if you're just a local government that's working on prevention, or excuse me, management of waste is what governments normally are, managing waste, right? Like, so there's a lot of times in my experience working in government and kind of working piece, because they're actually just so busy with that part that's managed. But we know that that's the actual hierarchy. You've got to actually start looking and putting resources and funding into a way that you can start getting your citizens to know more about the prevention piece, so that you actually design the composting facility that you need, because you're not thinking that it's got to take on all of this waste, right? So let me just kind of read through some of this, and just to show you what we're kind of doing moving forward. Showed you a grant right now that was specifically focused on that retailer and that city piece. But we're moving forward with Hamilton County. We're looking to, of course, use the local government, but and also look to getting a retailer as well, but and also a school. But we have a meeting just this week where we're hoping to engage that sports team, like we mentioned, like, so getting that message out there, because that's an influencer, that's someone that can actually get that message out to citizens in a different way. We're also another project is we're creating a guidebook in conjunction with the CEC, Commission for Environmental Cooperation, that's set to create a place where local practitioners can go and find different case studies and different types of interventions that will help you with your citizens and getting that message out. Because we know that local practitioners or local governments and NGOs have that wide reach, and we want to be able to create a document that will house some interventions and some information for you all to kind of put out these large, sweeping large interventions. It's for the North America, so it will be in Canada, Mexico, and the US. And we are looking for a few more participants. This guidebook is underway. If you're interested in maybe sharing anything you have done as a city that is a successful intervention, please reach out to me by the end of this week. We need just maybe a couple more days. And really, just again, this work, the work RAP is doing. We are in this prevention space of cities that are trying to manage their organics waste, and we do know that prevention is way more. It's like 8 to 9 times more effective at reducing climate impacts and methane and all these greenhouse gas emissions just by the reduction in itself. So it's much more effective than just trying to plan out composting and donation and recovery. We really are in that space where we want to work and help cities with their prevention messaging and provide a technical expertise in that. So if you are a city on the call, we'd love to begin to talk about developing some really strong partnerships and robust relationships with you all, so that we can eventually find strategies to actually find more funding to put this technical expertise out in more cities. So that's going to be a wrap for me. So please, if you're interested in either the CEC guidebook or connecting with RAP to drive this work forward and find more opportunities to partner, please reach out to me or Elaine Fiore that you just met on this call, and we'd love to talk to you. Oh, sorry, I should probably leave that up.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I'm hearing an echo.
I can't see anything. Okay, I'm gonna put our email addresses in the chat because I've already taken it down.
Perfect. Okay, before you all sign off, I just want to launch a quick poll for the audience. This is on our Consumer Food Waste Community of Practice website. You can take a few minutes just to fill out those, I think it's maybe 4 or 5 questions. Natasha, thank you for sharing the contact information. If you had any pressing questions that we did not have time to get to today, unfortunately, please feel free to reach out over email, either to myself or to our lovely speakers here today. Our next webinar will be on Monday, April 14th. And the slides from today, as well as a recording of this webinar, will be sent out to all of your emails. All right, thank you. Thank you to Elaine, David, Leslie, Natasha for joining us today, and all of our participants. Enjoy the rest of your day.